Keelan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mayor.
All right, good morning, everyone. This is the Thursday, November 12th, 2020 morning session of the Portland City Council. Keelan, please call the roll.
Udaley?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Ryan?
Here.
Hardesty?
Here.
Wheeler?
Here, under Portland City Code and state law, the City Council is holding this meeting electronically. All members of the council are attending remotely by video and teleconference, and the city's made several avenues available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The meeting is available to the public on the city's YouTube channel, eGovPDX, www.portlandoregon.gov/video, and channel 30. The public can also provide written testimony to council by emailing the council clerk at cctestimony@portlandoregon.gov. The council is taking these steps as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to limit in-person contact and to promote physical distancing. The pandemic is an emergency that threatens the public health, safety, and welfare, which requires us to meet remotely by electronic communications. Thank you all for your patience, your flexibility, and your continued understanding as we manage through this difficult situation to do the city's business. And with that, we will hear from legal counsel on the rules of order and decorum.
Good morning. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. The published council agenda at portlandoregon.gov/auditor contains information about how and when you may sign up for testimony while the city council is holding electronic meetings. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist, and if you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When your time is up, the presiding officer will ask you to conclude. Disruptive conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being placed on hold or ejected from the remainder of the electronic meeting. And please be aware that all council meetings are recorded.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll move to communications. First up is 891.
Request of Susan Cotter to address council regarding City of Portland communication strategy.
Good morning, Susan.
Good morning. Can I show my presentation?
Keelan?
Yeah, let me make a quick change here. Okay. Susan, are you able to unmute now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. Did that work?
Yeah. Sort of. I see a large blue square. Is that what's on your screen?
It should be.
Your audience has expanded, is what?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners Udaley, Fritz, Ryan, and Hardesty for this opportunity to speak to you. My name is Susan Cotter. I use she, her pronouns. I live in North Portland and have no affiliation. Today, I'm requesting that council develop a new communication strategy. The city's virtual meetings now garner a larger audience. And COVID-19 devastation and social unrest places even greater expectation on our local officials. With this larger audience expecting more, the quality of the content and the mode of communication becomes even more important. For example, communication structure around police reform are troublesome. I was unable to find any single source to help me understand the history of the issues we face, so I've compiled this document with the help of some community elders. There's no place to share with others since this effort isn't organized within the city. Council could also enhance communication by providing a public forum for a refresher on the Plan 2035, an update from all bureaus, and plans for police reform now that ballot measure 216-17 passed overwhelmingly by voters. Oh, I lost my little picture in the middle. I had a little picture in the middle of a presentation. Sorry about that. Council could require every presentation seek opportunities for community education, provide pre-stop opportunities for the public, transparently share all pros and cons, not just ones provided in testimony, and position each discussion within the city's overall plans and values. Please assign a single point of contact to refine the city's communication strategies throughout council and bureau services to help us understand what is being done to support us in this crisis. Thanks for your consideration. Black Lives Matter. With no justice, there is no peace.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it. Good presentation.
Thank you.
Next up is I'm sorry,
Mayor, I had a question for Susan.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Susan, what an impressive presentation. Are you a teacher?
No, I'm not.
I was just curious because it was such a very illuminating presentation. I just wanted to encourage you on my commissioner Facebook page. There's a lot of information about the history of police reform. There are also videos of community meetings where we talk to elders and new organizers. So if there's
and that's actually where I got that information, was looking at your and then I also went back to Dan with Cop Watch and League of Women Voters and the participants and whatnot to try to get it, because I know that PSEP struggles with new people, and I struggled when I was a new person. And so it would be so nice to have a single place where, you know, real information can be gathered and people can educate themselves and that sort of thing throughout in all kinds of things.
I agree with you, and I appreciate that, and that was really the goal of my office, is because you're right. People come at that at police reform from so many different angles. It's important that there's at least some educational data available for people so that they know what's happened in the past and hopefully where we're headed. So I just wanted to appreciate the work you did in that presentation. And now I understand why your information was so good, because you got
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan. Next up, Keelan, is next individual, please, item 892.
Request of Andrea Firpo to address council regarding Southwest Capitol Highway expansion project.
Good morning.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, you sound good.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Andrea Firpo. I am not affiliated with anyone. I am just a homeowner. I am speaking today regarding the Southwest Capitol Highway expansion project. I also attended a city council meeting on October 24th in 2018, letting you know how this plan is directly affecting me, my family, and our property. I own a home on the corner of Southwest Capitol Highway and Southwest Alice Street. This is the narrowest portion of the project. I was first notified in March 2018 by a postcard from PBOT after the 30% plans were made official. From my very first phone call with PBOT project manager Steve Sagathi, my husband and I were told that we would be compensated and that the city wanted to work with us. We were also told that our property line was incorrectly approved by the city upon construction of our home in 2008, and that they would need to require an additional 8 inches of our property long term. In our first meeting with PBOT project manager Steve Sagethi on October 13th of 2018, my husband and I were notified that PBOT would need to obtain a temporary construction permit for the entirety of our side yard, as well as the left portion of our front yard, which was designed by Portland Japanese Gardens landscape architect after we purchased our home in 2014. Specifically, our yard has mahogany decking, teak fencing, natural stone, and a waterfall that is directly affected by these finalized plans. I have made this clear with Steve since our very first phone call, yet Steve has not been out to our property to see how the construction will directly impact our yard. We then attended a scheduled meeting with Steve after a Multnomah Village subcommittee meeting where we asked the city to create a plan that moved around our yard, creating a fence surrounding what is already built. In October of 2019, as the plan progressed through PBOT into a finalized version at 90%, Steve scheduled a meeting at my home with the PBOT civil engineer staff, as well as Brandon Young, the proposed contractor from James W. Fowler Construction. This meeting was intended to discuss how this work could be constructed, and then the morning of, Steve was not able to attend. In this in-person meeting, I was told that it would cost the city nearly $100,000 to build around the current wall structure, and wouldn't I prefer to have a nice new side yard instead? I agreed, as long as I had helped with designing new plans for my yard. Last spring, we were notified that construction would be delayed and that James W. Fuller Construction had not reached an agreement with the city. I reached out to my architect and contractor who originally designed our yard to create plans for our side yard to submit to Steve. I paid an out-of-pocket expense to have these plans designed for the rebuild of our yard. On October 15th of 2020, I submitted these new plans to Steve at PBOT. I was told, we don't have a legal means of reimbursing you for your architect's work. However, where you can extract additional value is for us to discuss what elements of your demo plan, materials salvage, grading and fencing that we can have our contractor do, setting the stage for your future contractors' more detailed work. Please.
Andrea, that's 3 minutes.
Okay, I've got one more paragraph. I'm not only expected to pay for new architect drawings, but also for putting my side yard back together after the city is done with construction and not be compensated. I feel as if my family and I are being strong-armed by PBOT to complete this project how it supports PBOT's plan and not how it directly impacts our yard. And I ask that you please look into this matter further. I'm asking for your support here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And Keelan, is that it? Is there just 2 people today for communications?
Yes, just 2 today.
All right, it is 9:45. Let's go to our first time certain, please. Item number 893.
Appoint Alana Nyack and Kia Myers Duggan to the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing.
Colleagues, the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, sometimes referred to as PCEP, is a volunteer body that works closely with the City Council, the Portland Police Bureau, and the community. Born out of the DOJ settlement, the PCEP is tasked with, amongst many things, facilitating positive police and community relationships, helping assess PPB's current community engagement processes, and developing recommendations and strategies to increase meaningful public outreach and input. Today, I'm pleased to bring forth the appointment of 2 distinguished individuals to the PCEP, Alana Nyack and Kia Duggan Myers. It's my understanding that Alana's school required parental approval for being here and getting a temporary reprieve from class. So we're delighted that you could be here, and we appreciate both of you for joining us this morning. Colleagues, before we move forward, I'd also like to bring a brief amendment to this report. I'd like to add the appointees' biographies to the record. That was inadvertently left out. Could I get a second to add their biographies to the formal record, please?
Second.
Commissioner Hardesty seconds. Any further discussion on the amendment? Keelan, please call the roll on the amendment.
Daly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the amendment is adopted. Thank you, colleagues. And with that, I'd like to introduce Theo Latta. He's the city's PSEP coordinator who will speak a bit more about the PSEP and introduce the two appointees. Theo, take it away.
Good morning, all. Do we do video? Is that something that we do or no?
I'm sorry?
Do we do video? Is that something that we do or no? I don't know if I'm supposed to.
Oh, yeah. No, you look great. It's good to see you.
Well, I got a first grader in the background, so.
No worries.
Okay, good morning and thank you all. It's an honor to share this space with you. PSEP is a group of community members who work to amplify the many diverse voices and thought processes of the community. With these two new appointments, PSEP membership will continue to be comprised of folks who genuinely care about increasing community trust between the community and PPB. These volunteers do the work when it's not glorious to do so. They show up for people who don't know them, and they develop useful recommendations guided by input from the community. I know I don't have much time, so now I would just like to introduce Alana. Alana is a youth candidate, and I will let them introduce themselves in a way that feels right to them. Alana.
Hi, I'm Alana Nyack. I use she, her pronouns. I go to St. Mary's. I really want to be on the PSEP because I have worked with Raising Justice, a local nonprofit organization that's youth-led. We do a lot of policy and advocacy work. I'm specifically the policy director, and I really want to affect change within our police department so that we can make sure that communities of color feel more safe.
Thank you so much, Alana. Kia, please.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you, Theo, for the introduction. If I may share a few words. I want to start with my favorite quote, "Action is the antidote to despair," by Joan Baez. And this quote sums up why I want to be on and why I hope you will confirm my appointment to PSEP. There is a lot to be frustrated and in despair about. However, sitting on the sidelines, complaining and hand-wringing will not solve the issues that we are facing. Taking action, speaking up, and aligning with other leaders who are also proactively taking action will bring about the changes that we seek. As you know, as Mayor Wheeler pointed out, as did Theo, one of our charges on PSEP is to build trust, build bridges, and open the lines of communication between the community and the police to reduce the othering that has reached a fever pitch, especially lately. To that end, very simply, my wish and goal, please, to utilize my voice and my unique skills, experiences, and superpowers to be a part of a successful effort to bridge the gap and create a human connection to reduce the othering. 2, facilitate ongoing, honest conversations between our police and the community, because neither doubling down on one's position or sugarcoating issues that we're facing right now are going to serve us. And finally, number 3, to be a part of ensuring that we hold everyone, and that includes the police, the city, and the community, accountable for upholding their respective ends of the solutions that we propose and build together. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kia. We appreciate you and Alana for stepping forward and grateful for your willingness to serve on PSEP. It's a very important committee, and obviously it's only as good as the people who are on the committee and the discussions that you bring to the forefront. And just based on your backgrounds, your experience, and the aspirations that you've listed, I really appreciate it. I think you're going to be great. Colleagues, any further remarks from any of you before I entertain a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Motion from Commissioner Hardesty, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Please call the roll.
Daly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Well, thank you very much, both of you, for your willingness to serve. And as Mayor Wheeler said, this is a hugely important committee now more than ever. So I appreciate your stepping up, and thank you, Theo, for your staffing. Thanks, Mayor Wheeler, for your support of this committee. Aye.
Ryan,
Yes, I concur. Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you so much for your service. It's these volunteer roles are so important. And Ms. Dugan, if you could, or we'll reach out to you. I couldn't hear everything that you said, but I liked it. And so I'd just like to get a copy. So I'll make sure that we reach out to you. Anyway, aye.
Hardesty,
I want to thank you, Theo, for bringing this stellar candidates to the City Council. Thank you, Pia and Alana, for your willingness to serve on this committee, especially during this time in our history. Both of you are exactly what PSAP needs to continue to do the great work that they do. I am very happy to support your nominations and look forward to getting to know both of you. And Alana, I am thrilled that you had to get your school's permission in order to be able to be here this morning. I hope they will find this a good civics lesson and that you will be able to help the students at your school understand why it's so critical that young folks are civically engaged. Thank you both. I am very happy to vote aye.
Wheeler,
Alana, I'm spending a lot of time in Zoom meetings with folks from St. Mary's Academy. It's one of the schools that my daughter is very interested in attending. And one of the things that's impressed me most about it is just the commitment amongst the students at St. Mary's to be engaged civically in different ways. This is a very meaningful opportunity, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you juggling what is undoubtedly a very busy schedule already to be part of this important committee and to provide not only a key perspective, but also a youth perspective, which is really important in all the conversations we have here at City Council, but it's uniquely important when it comes to public safety and the work that PSEP does. And Kia, thank you as well. The experience you bring to the table is going to be extremely helpful to everybody in that room and beyond. And so thank you for your willingness to serve. And Theo, as always, you have one of the more difficult coordination jobs in the city of Portland. You've really done a great job, and I'm excited about your continued leadership. So thank you for all you do. I'm happy to vote aye. The report is accepted. The appointments are approved. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, Keelan, we'll go back to the consent agenda. Have any items been pulled off the consent?
no, nothing has been pulled off.
Let's go ahead and call the roll, please.
Daly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Wheeler,
All right, the consent agenda is adopted, and we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so why don't we go to some of the second readings on the regular agenda? Can we go to 899, please?
899, adopt the FY 2020-21 fall supplemental budget and make other budget-related changes.
Colleagues, any further discussion on this item? Keelan, please call the roll.
Daly,
One moment, please. As we all know, past councils have bargained away much of our power to reform our police bureau and hold police accountable. Budget and position authority are two of the only tools we have to push reform. And I am deeply disappointed that we are missing that opportunity today, especially at a time when we have dramatically increased need and suffering in our community. In the past 30 years, since Commissioner Hardesty began her advocacy for police reform, at least 160 people have died at the hands of the Portland police. And an untold number of our community members have suffered other devastating consequences due to our underinvestment in community needs and overinvestment and over-reliance on police, making our community less safe for everyone. It was just this June that my colleagues, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioner Fritz, were singing Commissioner Hardesty's praises and patting themselves on the back for supporting her budget amendments. Although I supported those budget amendments, I ultimately voted no on the FY 2021 budget this June because I didn't believe we had gone far enough. My office received nearly 75,000 emails and 2,000 voicemails, met with advocacy groups, including PALF, Unite Oregon, and the Portland Metro People's Coalition, and heard 7 hours of public testimony to council, all demanding more in this moment of national uprising for Black lives. I want to make something clear about that vote. I've said this before, but it bears repeating. I know that Commissioner Hardesty pushed the rest of our colleagues as far as they would go in that moment. My statement and my vote were not a reflection on her outstanding work. Though they fell short of community demands, those cuts were significant and they wouldn't have happened without her. 2020 has brought the beginning of re-envisioning what public safety and policing could and should look like in Portland. If $18 million was too much for our colleagues to support, they certainly could have offered an amendment. The OMF report made it clear that there was a minimum of $4 million that could have been cut up to $12 million without triggering layoffs, but they didn't. Without these critical investments in our most vulnerable community members that Commissioner Hardesty's amendments would have championed, we will continue to see an increase in survival-based crimes. We will continue to see homelessness rise. We will continue to see people struggle and suffer and die on our streets. These investments would reduce harm and increase safety for our whole community. That said, there are bright spots in this budget. There are an estimated 22,000 Portlanders who do not qualify for unemployment or stimulus checks. With my amendment to allocate $1.75 million to the Oregon Workers Relief Fund, those Portlanders will finally receive the COVID assistance that many of us received last spring. And I want to thank my colleagues for supporting that amendment. The $3 million allocation for participatory budgeting by Black Portlanders will mean that the community that has advocated for generations to defund the Portland Police Bureau will also have discretion over how those dollars are reinvested. Still, the budget fails to meet the needs and demands of the same communities of color that we placate with platitudes in meeting after meeting, year after year, before we predictably capitulate to the police and the status quo. As my colleagues and the public are well aware, I value debate and discussion with them in our public council sessions. If we come to council already decided, it negates the value of public testimony and the entire point of it. It undermines the public's trust in our process, and it diminishes transparency and accountability. There's nothing divisive about debate and deliberation, and I reject any suggestion to the contrary made by my colleagues. Like Commissioner Hardesty, I didn't run for office to fall into lockstep with the rest of council. I came here to get urgent work done for my community, and I'm proud to say that I have done that. There is value in debate and deliberation. It is the only way we will move forward. We don't have to have a perfect solution to replace an imperfect system. police themselves have virtually guaranteed that we don't have the information we need to devise one. Without adequate data and reporting, we're left in the dark, and that lack of clarity is dangerous. I want the best for the city, for my community, and for everyone on this council. While this is a sad day for me, I hope that we can move forward together for the sake of the people that we all represent. Once again, I'd like to thank Commissioner Hardesty and her staff, my staff, and every Portlander who has protested, written, called, and joined our hearings to advocate for Black lives. And I'd like to encourage my colleagues to reconsider their approach moving forward and act more swiftly on this and many other vital issues that are affecting so many of our community members. Portland, keep loving, keep fighting, and please keep each other safe out there. I vote no.
Fritz.
We normally make only minor and technical adjustments in the full budget monitoring process. This is not a normal year by any measure. The pandemic is surging. While we can't address all the economic challenges caused by COVID-19, we are helping many Portlanders in this budget vote. We will continue to look for more ways to help more people get through this crisis. Of course, I'm more hopeful after the national election that the federal government will provide greater support soon. I'm grateful that in my last budget vote, we will enact many meaningful, lasting improvements in the way the city serves all of its communities. I'm very excited about the advances in equity work, advances in equity in city work and in our communities with the decisions being adopted. The Office of Equity and Human Rights and the Tribal Relations Program will receive a substantial portion of the ongoing funding we cut from the police budget in June as part of the fiscal year 2020-21 adopted budget. This is what community members requested in the full budget process this spring, and it is another important step in right-sizing the Office of Equity and the Tribal Relations Program. Back in 2011, when we created the Office of Equity and Human Rights, it had 4 staff, including its first director, Dante James. I appreciate Mayor Wheeler's and Commissioner Udaley's support over the last 4 years, and Commissioner Hardesty's for the last 2, to add positions and responsibilities to the office following its initial development under Dr. James and Mayor Hales. With this vote, it will have 23 staff led by the amazing Dr. Markeisha Smith, who is ably supported by Dr. Kofi Dessou, the remaining founding member of the team. While there are still some missing components that I hope you will consider in the budget next year, this investment demonstrates deep and ongoing commitment to equity work within the city government. The community told the council in 2010 to put our own house in order. While there is still plenty of room for improvement, this vote means I leave the council confident that the momentum is unstoppable and the city of Portland is on its way to achieving the goal. New models for bureau equity work are being created, with an equity manager shared by small bureaus, which can't afford their own full-time equity manager, as well as a position located in the Office of Equity and Human Rights to provide support for equity work in the police bureau. Funding to make sure all city staff have access to the results-based accountability trainings on racial equity, sponsored by the Office of Equity, will help smaller bureaus. And for the first time ever, a position focusing on support for LGBTQIA+ communities will have ongoing funding. Special thanks to Seraphie Allen and Sam Diaz in Mayor Wheeler's office for their work to address this need in partnership with the Office of Equity. I am also particularly happy that the Council is providing more resources to the Tribal Relations Program under the outstanding leadership of Director Laura John. This work at the city to recognize sovereign nations and develop genuine, authentic relationships with Indigenous peoples had its origins in 2011 too. I urge the Council to approve the second phase of funding necessary for a robust Tribal Relations Program in the 2021 to 22 budget process. With the passage of the Parks Levy, funding for the Interstate Firehouse Cultural Center feasibility study is assured, and Parks will enact an interfund loan to make sure that it happens as soon as possible. We're taking care of basic services like the Pioneer Courthouse Square restroom, and we're helping address damage caused by criminal behavior at demonstrations. I greatly appreciate Commissioner Ryan's support of both all my amendments and the careful way forward. He has shown courage, kindness, and thoughtfulness in his first month on the council. He is truly a worthy successor to the statesman Commissioner Fish. If the choice was left to me, I would not have funded the new position to coordinate public safety bureaus. I worry that it will be another layer of bureaucracy and that it will take authority from the police and fire chiefs. But I'm not the mayor, and I respect that the charter gives the mayor the right to propose the budget. I don't begrudge him the right to make one or two $300,000 choices that I don't support as part of the $5.5 billion city budget adoption. Mayor Wheeler believes this position is important to the process of rethinking and reimagining a public safety system that is fiscally responsible and serves all community members, and I'm willing to support his decision even though I have concerns. So thank you, Mayor Wheeler, Kristen Dennis, and Tony Shkamansky for guiding this process calmly and carefully. Thank you to Jessica Kennard, Jane Marie Ford, and all the staff at the City Budget Office. I'm so proud of partnering with Commissioner Fish to create and elevate your independent analysis and voice. Thank you most especially to my amazing staff, Tim Crail, Claire Adamsick, Cynthia Castro, Mi-Sung Kwan, Yesenia Carrillo, and Astrid Dragoy for all of your support and guidance to me. Aye.
Ryan.
Yes. Hello, good morning. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. It's an honor to follow you. And I'll keep my comments short. I made a lot of comments last Thursday. This was an unprecedented learning budget management process, the bump. I'm grateful for the spirited debate that my colleagues and I have participated in throughout this process. I am staunchly committed to reforming the Portland Police Bureau, and I look forward to doing that work with my colleagues and with the community. And I really did appreciate all the comments and all the phone calls and that we have been managing for several months on this issue. I am also hopeful that our city can begin to heal as we move forward in building a real community safety system, especially working with our colleagues at the county as we build a mental health system that our community truly deserves. I vote aye.
Hardesty.
First, I want to thank the hundreds of people who came to testify on behalf of this budget. I want to appreciate the tens of thousands of people who have taken to the streets of Portland night after night after night, demanding justice and police accountability. I want to thank my colleagues who we don't always agree, and nor should we. I don't always agree with just about anybody, including myself. I also want to say that this budget does not reflect the moment in history that we're in. We have an obligation to rise up and be bigger and bolder than we ever imagined we could be. When we are suffering as a community and we continue to give lip service to either Black Lives Mattering or to transforming how policing operates in this community, it is disheartening. This is not a regular budget process. This year has not been a regular year. What we know is coming next year is going to be significantly more devastating to Black, Indigenous, and other people of color communities. When the assumption is somehow I should sing Kumbaya along with people who have not had my lived experience, who have never been Black in America, who's never been targeted by the police, who've never cried with family members who've lost loved ones at the hands of police, I reject that totally and without reservations. When I ran to bring my full self to the city council. That includes me living all over the world. That includes me working on issues that impact my day-to-day life and my community's day-to-day life. And I would not be the person I am if I did not use all my energy to try to transform systems that harm community members. This year, because of the pandemic, because of the economic cliff we're about to go over, because of the high rate of unemployment that we will see, that we've never seen, even surpassing the Great Depression, we have an opportunity to lead in ways that we never imagined possible. And when we're told, now's not the time, not this budget cycle, we'll talk about this later. That's not what I came to city council for. That's not what I ran for. That is not the work that I came here to do. This budget basically reflects status quo. There are some additions that I support, but for the most part, I'm told to be polite, play along with my white middle-class colleagues, and just pretend that Black Lives Matter in a building that has never prioritized Black lives. It is my hope that as a city, we will start to heal, but we can only heal if we're honest. I'm told that we should all figure out how to be collegial with each other. Let me tell you, white people will never be comfortable talking about racial inequality. I have lived this experience for 65 years, and this building is no different than any place else I've been. And especially in the Pacific Northwest, where we pride ourselves on politeness without actually saying or doing anything. This budget is just one part. I didn't get my way. I never expect to get my way all the time. But I want to assure my colleagues that the work continues, the transformation continues, the demands from the community continue. And as long as I'm in this seat, I will continue to push, prod, encourage my colleagues to actually do something, not just talk about doing something. There's reparation owed to African Americans in this country. And it's not just owed because of what Republicans have done, it's owed because of what Democrats have done. Now's the time to start talking about reparations. And if we're gonna heal, we have to start with truth. I just love how people want to just go right to reconciliation as if that's a thing without dealing with the truth. The truth is we have failed Black, Indigenous, and other people of color in this community, and we failed them over and over and over again. Our problems are not just in the police bureau. Our problems are in every public system we have. We continue, well, not we, you, other people continue to believe that the disparate outcomes are somehow the fault of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. But the reality is these systems weren't built for us. These systems were built for white, middle-class men. And they continue to operate for white, middle-class men. We need to heal as a community. We need to come together because quite frankly, the election has shown us that 50% of people thought that 45 was doing a good job. It terrifies me to think that half of this country actually believe that that person represented who we are. I am a no vote on this budget, and there are several good things in it that I support. But I am a no vote on this budget, but I want to be really clear to my colleagues. I'm not bitter that I did not get my way. I am already starting to think about the January budget process in June when we vote on the next budget. I want to assure the public that Black lives will continue to matter to me in January and in June. And I will continue to do all I can to help my colleagues walk in the shoes of people that they have no idea of their lived experience. We are good at talking equity and diversity and inclusion. But when you look at the outcomes all across the city of Portland, we continue to fail miserably. And until we can acknowledge our failure, there's absolutely no way to build a more equitable city. I'm here for the long haul. I will continue to work with my colleagues to help them get educated in what my lived experience has been and what other people that look like me's lived experience has been. I'm going to close soon because this is not about me. This is about the city of Portland. I just want to close with 2 comments. One, I want to say directly to Commissioner Dan Ryan that in no way is it okay for people to come to your house and try to terrorize you and your partner and destruct your property. Anyone who knows me knows that I am a child of the civil rights movement, and I have never advocated violence against anyone. And so, Commissioner Ryan, the people who came to your house did not represent me, my values, or my perspective. I want to end with this. Recently, you've read articles about me and a Lyft driver. Another example of being Black in America and being put in a position where I have to be the one to look out for my personal safety. Didn't expect the Lyft driver to do it, certainly didn't expect the police to do it. It was my responsibility to make sure I got home safe, and I did everything I could to get home safe. Where you're living in a city where white supremacists are proudly riding around in their big trucks with their flags, and you're a Black person and somebody wants to put on the side of the road at night, not gonna happen. I just want you to know this budget is a moment in time. We have an obligation to be better, to be more visionary, and to be swifter in fundamentally fixing these broken systems. I vote no.
Wheeler.
Well, thank you. And first of all, I appreciate the values and the passion that my colleagues are bringing to this conversation. Commissioner Fritz, I want to acknowledge that this is your last budget action as a member of this council over many, many years. And I just want to say some commissioners love budget processes, other commissioners don't. You always dove in head first into the budget process. And I want you to know how much I've appreciated the partnership over the years that I've served on this council around budgets. And I not only want to extend my personal gratitude to you as a leader and a resident of this community, I also want to extend that to your entire staff. You've been helpful, and I will miss your perspective and your voice as we go through a very difficult budget situation next year. Colleagues, there's no such thing as a perfect budget. This is no exception, but on the whole, I'm very proud of this final package. Because of early and aggressive action this spring, the city's financial situation is notably much better than it might have been otherwise. And we've been able to use this opportunity to make investments in key city and community priorities. This package reflects the council's 2 key guideposts from 2020, which was our COVID recovery and resilience resolution, and of course, the core city values that we unanimously adopted just this past summer. The investments that we're adopting through this budget today center on those values: our COVID recovery, violence prevention, enhancements to equity and inclusion, and good environmental stewardship. We're supporting local employers who've been hard hit this year with investments that support a healthy and clean and welcoming Central City. We're keeping our neighbors experiencing homelessness safe through the fall and the winter by significantly increasing our sheltering capacity. We're continuing to invest in rent assistance to keep Portlanders housed. We're realigning dollars from the Police Bureau to other more appropriate systems of care. We're expanding our Office of Violence Prevention so that it has the resources it needs to address the public health crisis of gun violence in our community. We're strengthening our Office of Equity and Human Rights, including with the city's first ever LGBTQIA+ liaison and our Tribal Relations Program with new positions to better serve Portlanders. And lastly, we funded a $3 million community reinvestment pilot. In partnership with Reimagine Oregon, we will support a community budgeting process centered and led by Black voices. Together, these investments are moving the city forward to a more responsive, more equitable, and more sustainable future. Several weeks ago, Commissioner Ryan asked us at the beginning of a budget session to talk about our core priorities. And I thought that conversation was both important and helpful. And Commissioner Ryan, I want to thank you for asking that simple question, because what we heard is that although we on this council frequently disagree on the details, which by the way, we probably should. I've often said if all of us agree on everything all the time, we're not really serving the city that well. We have a lot of different views and perspectives and priorities in this community, and so we should have robust debate. But what I heard Commissioner Ryan and colleagues in that discussion is that while we have these differences of opinion, the council is deeply rooted in key shared values. And I know that our incoming council members share these values as well. We're not always going to agree on the tactics or the timing, but we will all be united in these shared values and a commitment to progress for the people of Portland. After all, that's ultimately what brought us here in the first place, was that shared desire to move our community forward in a positive way and to do it together. I want to thank, as always, our City Budget Office Director, Jessica Kennard, and her team, Kristen Dennis and Amanda Watson in particular for my office, although virtually everyone on my team touched this in some way or another, and the many bureaus and council staff who worked so hard throughout the entirety of this process. Again, colleagues, thank you. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. And we can go to our second time certain item. That would be 894, please, Keelan.
Authorize a competitive solicitation and contract for the development of a turnkey solution to design, install, manage, and maintain electric vehicle charging station infrastructure in the most cost-neutral or cost-beneficial manner to the city.
Colleagues, in June, we passed Portland's Climate Emergency Declaration, which recognized that we need to significantly step up our efforts to reduce emissions and restore a safe climate. And we outlined the climate justice focused approach we're taking in our chapter of climate action. At the same time, we're working to reduce community-wide emissions and build resilience to the impacts of climate change. We need to make sure that the city is also walking our talk by doing everything we can to reduce emissions from city operations and set examples for other local agencies, organizations, and private sector companies. In December of last year, I outlined a set of action steps the city would undertake to address climate in city operations. This ordinance advances one of those climate policy commitments, specifically to electrify the city's fleet of sedans as quickly as possible by developing a policy requiring bureaus to purchase electric vehicles and replacing sedans, and by exploring public-private partnership opportunities to put in place the required charging infrastructure. Since January, the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability and the Office of Management and Finance have been working together to identify strategies to not only accelerate the switch to electric sedans, but to also decarbonize the city's fleet as a whole. This ordinance helps to address an important foundational piece for our fleet decarbonization goals, determining how we can scale up our charging infrastructure to support more electric vehicles. I'll now turn this over to staff to give the presentation. I believe we have Maddie Sauter from the Division of Asset Management, Alan Bates from our city fleet, and Pam Neld from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. So as noted, my name is Maddie Sauter, and I run the Division of Asset Management for the City of Portland. So that's our fleet and facility services organizations. And I'm joined today by Alan Bates, who came to the city in March of this year after a decade of experience in the rideshare and electric vehicle industry, and Pam Neld, who is a terrific program coordinator in the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. She focuses on climate work. So as the mayor noted, we're here to present for your review, discussion, and hopefully approval, authorization to issue an RFP for something called Charging as a Service. And Alan and Pam are going to dive more into what Charging as a Service is, but we thought it might also be useful to come and give you guys some insight into what's happening with the Green Fleet strategy overall and what's happening with the Division of Asset Management in support of that. We don't get a lot of opportunities to come in front of council, so we thought you and your constituents might like to know what we've been up to and what the state of the Green Fleet conversion is. Alan, could you go to the next slide, please? So the Division of Asset Management, we used to be called the Bureau of Internal Business Services. I think that bureau disbanded in 2017 or 2018 and reformed as Fleet and Facility Services. Our division has two primary functions. The first is that we support everyday bureau operations, so provision of facilities and fleet equipment. The second job that we have is to advance citywide strategic initiatives. So some of those are seismic related, some of them are equity related. A lot of it is climate related given the state of our asset base. The division has had in the past 6 months to 2 years, nearly an entirely, we've almost entirely replaced our leadership team in the last year and a half. And most of us are coming to public service actually from business. So we have a strong dedication to cost management, to making sure that we're focusing on our core competencies, to solving problems creatively with market and with industry, to think about how to do our work really well. And as part of that, we've engaged a lot in the last year on focusing on barriers to execution. So the city has a lot of visions, and we have to put those visions into play. And so for us, we need to figure out what it is that's preventing us from moving forward, either operationally or strategically. We spent a lot of time strategic planning, building scorecards for our staff, developing community partnerships, and looking at our cost structure to figure out where we can spend money better. Where are we wasting cash? Where are we wasting time? And how can we do a better job of service delivery? Next slide, Alan. It's my hope that I don't have to articulate for you guys why this is a good thing for you. Namely, first and foremost, your ideas get implemented. So we don't want to see Green Fleet be an idea that sits on the shelf for a while. We want to move it forward. And in order to do that, we want to make sure that when we benefit, we also create benefits for others. So we have developed very strong partnerships with certain organizations and institutions regionally that have core competencies that we don't have. We've also tried to participate in certain regulatory proceedings that I don't think City Fleet in particular has ever participated in. And we're really trying to pave the way for not just our own Green Fleet conversion, but also for that of others, trying to make sure that there's an equitable approach to regulation, to legislation, and to action in this space. And you'll see that in the charging ordinance in particular. This is a new way of doing business, and we're right in there trying to figure out how to craft it properly. So at the end of the day, I think we're hoping that we don't just fulfill the mayor's 2019 directive related to sedans. I know when I saw that being shaped up, I was thinking, why are we just focused on sedans? We should be doing everything. And so it's my hope that we don't just fulfill this directive in doing that, but we actually respectfully kind of blow it out of the water, and that we actually do far more than that, far more quickly. Next slide, Ellen. So in relation to City Fleet and our Green Fleet strategy, we are actually reorganizing City Fleet operations. So we're getting out of lines of business that are not our areas of expertise, and we're doubling down on acquisitions, which is where the Green Fleet planning is happening, and in garage operations. We have worked very hard to understand why is it taking so long to convert the fleet, and it really comes down to two things. The first is in service of the bureaus, they need two things. They need reliable equipment, and they need it to be cost effective or cost neutral, or even ideally cost less than what they do right now. And so from a reliability standpoint, this is where partnership has come into play. We have worked for the last year, I would say, to develop a partnership that's really doing a lot of the market research for us about vehicles coming into market and identifying when we think that reliable equipment is going to be becoming available to us. And from a cost effectiveness standpoint, we are actually today, we just hired a Green Fleet analyst. You guys approved that FTE in the last budget. Thank you very much. We're hired today a Green Fleet analyst to help us build a business case that we think is going to help the bureaus understand conversion. So there's three core components of a business case for converting your vehicle. You want to understand acquisition costs, maintenance costs, and fuel costs. And the first two of those, acquisitions and maintenance, we've partnered with others to understand the research behind that and what we think those cost inputs are going to be in the business case. But the fuel cost is the big unknown. And for EVs, that's really related to charging. So last, before I hand it over to Alan to talk about charging as a service, for anybody who's wondering why society doesn't have EVs at large, a huge part of that is charging. Charging is extraordinarily costly and very complex to develop. A lot of upfront capital costs, so going from the end of the distribution system to the charging equipment, that's a space called make ready. And when you open up the ground, you never really know what you're going to find in that space. So it's a risky space for people to work in, and it's not covered by the current regulatory purview of the utilities. So that's a space we're working in right now to try and help support more affordable ways for utilities to cover those costs so that market doesn't have to figure out how to solve that problem. But even once you get to the charging equipment, you've got a lot of operations and maintenance responsibilities and costs. I know when I came to the city, there was an assumption that the city would do all of this ourselves. And I'm going to tell you, I think that's a horrible business idea. I don't think we should be doing this ourselves. It's an asset base that we don't have the skills, time, equipment, money to manage, all the way down to data security. That's just not a space that we should be working in as a core competence. So mercifully, if the regulatory sphere is taking care of the make ready, the infrastructure itself, in the charging space, we believe that market is finally stepping up to try to solve that problem. And so Alan's going to talk more about that, but this is an essential transition for us in terms of being able to not just procure charging support, but also to understand pricing around it and stable pricing around it that we can use as part of the business case to help bureaus understand their timeline for conversion and get to that space. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alan, and he's going to talk about charging as a service.
Thank you, Maddie. I'm Alan Bates. I'm helping lead our Green Fleet transition at City Fleet. As we heard the mayor say, Portland has declared a climate emergency requiring fleet decarbonization, which means transitioning from fossil fuels to electric vehicles as quickly as possible. While we've made some progress with light-duty electrification, we're keenly aware that our emergency requires larger scaled efforts instead of just the ad hoc installations that we've been doing to date. The biggest barrier, as Maddie mentioned, is this charging infrastructure. We've had a traditional liquid fuel infrastructure for a century. The new electric fuel must now be built, and the city really lacks the upfront capital, the experience, and the resources to build and manage our own charging stations. The cost to install charging varies greatly. It's difficult to assess. There's no current model that really allows us to do this at scale. So that's where charging as a service comes in. In order to expedite our Green Fleet transition, City Fleet is exploring a citywide model called Charging as a Service, which would be a coordinated effort to hire a vendor who will install, own, operate, and maintain the charging infrastructure. This will allow us to streamline this process and shift from expensive and unbudgeted upfront capital costs to an ongoing operating expense in the form of a monthly pay-as-you-go subscription or per kilowatt rate. Charging as a service model uses smart charging technology to optimize energy, minimize our electric fueling costs. It allows us to consolidate citywide data and reporting of electric fuel and provides a scalable, affordable transition to EVs. The plan is to enter a 5-year contract with the vendor, which will allow us to transition approximately 350 of our 2,600 motorized vehicles from internal combustion to electric over that time period. Portland is one of the first cities in the nation to attack charging infrastructure in this way, and many others are interested to learn from us. The goal is to have the charging costs associated with this RFP be revenue neutral. Our preliminary analysis conducted alongside Portland General Electric suggests that these savings will offset the cost of installing and maintaining charging infrastructure. The benefits of our transition are numerous. We estimate saving over 1,000 metric tons of CO2 reduction per year in the first phase. That's equivalent to about 200 passenger cars off the road every year. We believe that city workers being introduced to this technology are more likely to choose electric in their personal car purchase. In addition, branded electric vehicles will be highly visible as we carry out the work of the city. Oregon minority and women-owned businesses have the potential to respond to this RFP. In addition, a member of the Minority Evaluator Program will participate in the evaluation of proposals. The visibility of city fleet EVs can impact general community comfort level with this new technology and potentially increase adoption of EVs. Lastly, there are positive benefits to this work in air quality. Pictured here is a map of nitrogen dioxide or NO2 concentrations across Portland. Transportation is a major source of NO2, which impacts low-income communities disproportionately, especially those who live in close proximity to major traffic corridors and highways. City of Portland's fleet vehicles are responsible for 9,000 metric tons of CO2 emissions annually. Transitioning an additional 350 to electric will improve the air quality and livability in the city. Now I'd like to pass it over to Pam Neild from BPS.
Thank you, Alan. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Pam Neild, Program Coordinator at Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. I'm here to convey BPS's support for this work. City Fleet has engaged us from day one on this project, and their work fully upholds the climate equity mission at BPS. The 100% renewable resolution and the climate emergency declaration acknowledge that the Portland metro area faces a human-made climate emergency and frontline communities as being the least responsible for, but most impacted by climate change. These resolutions commit the city to having a fully renewable transportation sector by 2050. They direct the city to adopt new policies that prevent further expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure in the city and quicken the transition to clean, renewable fuel options that are also good for air quality. This ordinance focuses on reducing carbon emissions in the transportation sector. Our most recent emissions inventory indicates that 42% of local carbon emissions are attributed to the transportation and goods, or to the transportation of goods and people in Multnomah County. Transportation is the only sector in which emissions are increasing. Issuing this RFP is a key step in achieving our operational goals. Personally, I've worked on internal operations promoting sustainability projects for many years. I played a significant role in the development of the city operations chapter of the 2015 Climate Action Plan, among many other projects. And this is the most committed and collaborative team I've had the pleasure of working with. BPS looks forward to continuing partnership with OMF Dam and City Fleet on these innovative and important decarbonization projects. Thank you. I'll now turn it back to Maddie for closing remarks.
Sorry, I was on mute. So again, I want to emphasize the collaboration with BPS on this effort has been extraordinary, along with certain community partners. I do think that this is revolutionary work in the field and certainly for us as an operation. So we want to turn it over to you for questions, and I appreciate the support so far by the city.
Thank you. Great presentation. Commissioner Fritz has a question.
Thank you. It was a super presentation. My only question is there a reason we can't make this an emergency ordinance?
There isn't. My understanding is by making it an emergency, we'd be allowed to issue the RFP tomorrow. We're not quite ready for that, but we could certainly issue it as an emergency declaration or as an emergency ordinance so we can issue it ASAP.
Mayor, I move to add an emergency so that the RFP can go out as soon as possible, because that's in the public good, because our planet is dying.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Hardesty seconds. Any further discussion on the amendment? Call the roll on the amendment.
Daly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The amendment's adopted. It's now an emergency ordinance. Commissioner Hardesty has her hand raised.
Thank you. And Pam, maybe you're the one to answer this question. I get concerned when we hear terms like cost neutral. What does that mean specifically with this particular RFP request?
I think I'm probably the one to actually answer that. So we are an internal service fund. And so essentially we take all of our costs together for fleet and separately. So for fleet services, and we bundle them together and charge them in a rate to the bureaus. So there are portions of our rate structure to bureaus that are fixed, and there are portions that are variable. For example, fuel right now, liquid fuel is variable. It's dependent on consumption. So what we are actually starting in 21-22, we're trying to change the rate model for our bureau customers, because we think that the current rate model is financially unstable, but it also disincentivizes good behavior on the part of everybody, customers and ourselves, like poor utilization, poor staff design on our part. And so we are actually moving to change the rate model to fix it. And within that, that will be considered total fleet cost. And so when we talk about cost neutral, what we're really saying is that we want to try to make sure that within the rate that the bureaus pay, they're not paying any elevated costs. So they're not paying some sort of premium simply because we've gone green. And if you look at the cost streams associated with EVs, what you'll see is that the vehicles tend to be about on par with current vehicles, at least not if you're choosing the very first items off the line, but for sedans, for example, the acquisition costs are relatively neutral. What we can also see is that maintenance is going down. So because they don't have internal combustion engines, the maintenance cost for those vehicles is significantly lower. But we know that the fueling costs might actually be higher because you have to pay some sort of amount for the charging infrastructure, even if it's a levelized cost. So our goal is to try to have the total cost stack for the bureaus be neutral from what it is now. There may be some premiums that are required here and there, but there's a whole lot going on in fleet that they're probably going to have to pay for. But from our perspective, we want to try to keep our costs to the bureaus as low as possible, as neutral as possible, because frankly, they have other things they need to spend their budget on. So that's our goal. That's what we mean by that.
So I hope you are considering bureaus who, like for example, fire and rescue is in my portfolio. And as we know, fire trucks, even though we actually now have an electric fire truck maker, it will be long after I'm dust that our entire fleet will be electric. And so I am concerned about adding, and let me also say that would be significant to invest in turning our fire fleet into an electric fleet. And so I'm just concerned that when we do these kind of projects and we talk about all the bureaus as one, we do not take into account bureaus who are reliant on vehicles because that's what they do. That we haven't taken into account what the impact will be on those bureaus. So I don't think you can treat fire and police the same way that you treat every other bureau within the city. And so I want to make sure that we are not increasing costs in ways that does not benefit the bureaus who have no choice but to actually be in vehicles to do their job.
Yeah, understood. I mean, I think every bureau that we serve is reliant on vehicles, PBOD, for example, heavy equipment, that's what they do. But one of the things we've been working through with finance managers in all of the bureaus is to create pro formas so that they can understand for the next 5 years, what do my projections look like? And where do I have an ability to potentially reduce my cost within the cost stack? So I know we don't actually do fire trucks, so that's really more within fire's domain, but we do all the fire marshal vehicles, for example. So within that, we're definitely going to be working with them to understand of all of these initiatives, where are we going to be increasing your costs and where are we going to be potentially decreasing your costs, and what are your levers in order to enhance your cost management practices. So it's an active collaboration. We have a customer stakeholder group that we just established for the first time for our organization in September to really work through these issues of cost management and service delivery. I don't think there's a single bureau that's not dependent on good service delivery from all of the internal service funds. And we are keenly aware of the fact that if we don't manage our costs well, it's really the bureaus that are unable to perform their operations going forward because they won't have the budget to do it. So that's part of the reason for us really looking for creative solutions to manage our costs, to manage them well, along with any strategic initiatives we have. But definitely hear you. It's a concern for, I think, for every bureau.
And so what happens if we move from fossil to diesel fuel? It's cleaner. It is, all the benefits that you get from having cleaner fuel would be created. What happens to the cost share if we are creating a system whereby we think electric is the only way to reduce cost and reduce the impact on the climate?
I assume you're referring to renewable diesel, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I mean, there's a number of technologies that could come and displace what it is that we're doing. So renewable diesel, hydrogen is potentially on the horizon. So I think my goal, especially in this ordinance, is to not have us wed to extremely large cash sinks. So we do not, for example, want to build our own charging infrastructure. It could be in the tens of millions of dollars. Even tomorrow, we could have problems with geographic flexibility as a fleet. Say fire gets out of its location on Milwaukee and 12th. Nobody wants to build a bunch of charging infrastructure in one location and then have fire's headquarters move somewhere else. Right. You don't have an ability to move that around. So I think for us, moving to the charging as a service model in particular limits our liability from putting large buckets of cash, developing entire organizations to maintain that infrastructure into technologies that may very well evolve and move out of our portfolio. So this is the goal, is to be responsive to industry, to be responsive to technological change, and to make sure that we're limiting the city's liability in these regards, because the world changes and we have to be able to shift with it. And we can't be stuck in these outdated models, whether it's gas or EV potentially one day.
Thank you so much. You make me feel so much better, Mary. Because I'm always concerned about us doing cost sharing, shifting that doesn't really take into account some of the uniqueness of some of the bureaus that we have. I look forward to seeing what proposals come in. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, and thank you for that great presentation. It was really helpful. I also want to acknowledge two of my questions were just covered by Commissioner Hardesty, so I really appreciated the budget neutral dialogue, and also what other options we have if we can't get to electrical right away. What are the other steps we can take? Because you'd all agree, right? Our big goal here is fresh air, clean air. Is that true? Is that the big goal here?
I think so.
I think it's important now and then to remember what the big goal is. And so I appreciate just having that moment with all of you. I see that there was a recent third-party analysis that indicated 32% of the city fleet vehicles could be converted from traditional to electrical in the next 10 years. And I hear that one of the magical solutions is, of course, this RFP and working with this partner. What I'd like to see as we move forward sooner than later is breaking down that goal, because my experience with big goals is you don't get there in 10 years unless you back map it. And so I'd really like to see what success looks like with a dashboard and where we need to be in 2 years, where we need to be in 4 years. So in 10 years from now, we're not, people whoever are on this body aren't having a really similar conversation and fretting why they didn't get there. So it's a big goal. And if we can break it down into what we did in 1 year's time to get there, then we actually will achieve it. So I'd just like to see a dashboard from all of you on what success looks like. Does that Is that possible?
It is. I do want to note, I thought that I had pulled that stat actually from the from the document that went out. We have had a third-party analysis done. We haven't had a whole lot of time to take that and say, is this exactly valid? We think it's pretty accurate, but one of the things our Green Fleet analyst is going to be doing, so this is our first analyst in fleet ever, is taking that number, vetting it, unpacking it, and I certainly think that a dashboard is in order. You may see a little bit of a lumpy trend line as infrastructure comes on and stabilizes and then work converts. But absolutely, I think that's a fair request. I think we should be communicating about all of our conversion requirement goals and requirements over time. And we have set up a strategic plan. We have scorecards, and all of these things need to be aligned and communicated to our constituents.
Yeah, and I'm not hung up on the exact data point as much as having some community transparent accountability on this one, because that's what's needed.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my main thing, just making sure we have some visual accountability to meet this ambitious goal.
Got it.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions for right now? Keelan, do we have people signed up for public testimony?
No one has signed up.
All right, Commissioner Hardesty, you have your hand raised.
Sorry, Mayor, it's just left over.
Oh, no worries. All right, Keelan, please call the roll.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
This is really exciting work. Coincidentally, my 20-year-old car died this week. So one of the things I'm looking forward to in the new year is to go shop for an electric vehicle. And so it's good to know that the city is also, even though your cars aren't dying and presumably not 20 years old either, that this work is happening. So thank you very much. Good work. Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Thank you all. Great work, great presentation. Look forward to seeing the results. Next up is time certain item 895, please.
Proclaim November 2020 to be Native American Heritage Month.
Colleagues, it's time to celebrate and express our gratitude to the First Peoples of this land. Each year, City Council welcomes speakers from tribal communities to share their cultures and their stories. I'd like to introduce Laura John, the Director of our Tribal Relations Office. Director John, welcome.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners Fritz, Udaly, Hardesty, and Ryan. Thank you for providing time this morning to present the 2020 Native American Heritage Month proclamation. My name is Laura John, and I'm a descendant of the Blackfeet and Seneca Nations. It is my honor to serve as the city's Tribal Relations Director in the Office of Government Relations. Native American Heritage Month is a time to center and celebrate Native people and tribal nations. In addition, this proclamation serves to educate Portlanders about Native people and the value they bring to the city of Portland. Today, it is my special honor to introduce a panel of distinguished members of the Native American community. We have also brought today a video cultural presentation since we are in COVID times. And then we'll hear from Ed Edmo to speak about his lived experiences growing up at Celilo Falls. We will also hear from Bodhi Shah, Deputy Regional Director at the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Portland area office. And lastly, but far from least, we will hear from Katie Wolf, the city's Emergency Communications Center Director and a member of the city's First Nations Affinity Group. Before we play the video, I wanted to give special thanks to Isaac Trimble for creating a video that we can share and help present our culture here today since we cannot be in person. He's a local filmmaker that grew up here in Portland that has won numerous awards for his work. I also want to give special thanks to the Four Directions drum singers Harold Paul and Stephen Paul, both from the Nez Perce Nation, as well as dancers Harmony Paul from the Nez Perce Nation and Kiana Allen from the Warm Springs tribe. Let's begin with the video.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody. Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to our proclamation of Indigenous Day. My name's Gilbert Brown. My Indian name is Yaya Hus. I'm Klamath Modoc Paiute Yehuskin of the Snake River in Warm Springs. As Indigenous people, we're the caretakers of the world. And if you notice, we're all praying now. We're praying for the healing of Mother Earth. We find our inner peace through dance and song. Pray for one another. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kiana Allen. I'm 13 and I come from the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, Oregon. Native American means to me of coming from a resilient community. I suggest that you all learn the history of the indigenous land that you now live on. Thank you.
Inaloi Saki Kinawa Tikinama. Hello, my name is Harmony Paul. My Indian name is Tikinama from Meadow. Indian Heritage Month means to me we are not just resilient. I'm proud of who and where I come from, along with ceremonies, and I believe all heritages, no matter where you're from, is very important. Hold yourself in respect because you're not just for yourself, you're dancing for the spirit of, for the people, for the drummers, the elders that really just enjoy you dancing, and for the spirit at that powwow, for the prayers that are being said there.
So hello, my name is Harold Paul, and this is Native American Heritage Month, November celebration of Native American people. The drumming is, for me, it's about talking to the spirit, everything and everyone around me. For drumming and dancing, anything you do, you should have good feelings. When we sing for that energy of what's happening on the floor. You go up there when you're dancing for our elders, you're dancing for our ancestors.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to our proclamation of Indigenous Day. My name's Gilbert Brown.
Thank you. I also wanted to acknowledge the Great Spirit Methodist Church for allowing the space to be open for this video to be created and for the family to come and do that presentation for us. I hope you enjoyed it. Next, I would like to introduce Ed Edmo. He is a storyteller and a Portlander, well-known Portlander, and invite him to speak now.
Hi, I'm Ed Edmo. My tribes are Shoshone, Bannock, Nez Perce, Yakima. Raised 95 miles east of Portland at a place called Slallow Falls. Here's a picture of Slallow. They built a dam March 10, 1957, and flooded us out. Government didn't treat us too good. They threatened us. Henry Thompson, Chief Thomas Thompson, said you should give us $50 for every board of drying shed. Government got angry and accepted for us not going to condemn your land. The Deschutes go to the Columbia, east side of the Deschutes River. White man had a gas station and store. He held out for a higher price. We watched the bulldozer came bulldozing down his gas station and store. He never saw a cent for his business. Made an example out of him. Remember, he had brown work pants, brown shirt, and brown hat, crying to a red bandana. He never saw a cent for his business. Made an example that they'd condemn us and not pay us anything. It was a tough time. Them didn't treat us too well. I'm going to read some poetry. My book, These Were Words of Mine. Slala Blues. He came atomic government man with briefcase in hand. His wire-framed glasses hung from his nose. His whining voice came out in a never-ending drone, promising promises again and again. Different ears that have paid not to hear. Rather than were the pre-recorded briefing sessions behind armed guards. Again, we drowned. Smell of fishermen. You made your nets and tested the knots, seeing that they held. Little did you know what was to hold you at the sound of water falling over what used to be. My most famous poem, published in 1983 in New Zealand, A Nation Within. 97 featured on Poetry Motion on the Maxes and Trimet buses. It's at Stone, Oregon State University at the Valley Library. Look at the main door, there's a long little bench on the right. This poem's in granite. What I like about that, they didn't have to die first. You know, it's poetry, poet grant, well, then white guys, not Indians or women. Indian education blues. I sit in crowded classrooms and learn how to read about Dick, Jane, and Spot. I remember how to get a deer. I remember how to beadwork. I remember how to fish. I remember the stories told by the old, but Spot keeps showing up. My report card is bad. I said to the Oregon History Center, there's been something. There's been something. Sometimes a song, sometimes a whisper. Sometimes it appeared to be animal, other times, weeping, I hear it. But something that disappeared from my Mother Earth. I'm not sure what it was. Sometimes at night I can hear it in the wind, or it comes to me in my dreams, like the smell of salmon cooking. Thank you for listening, everyone. Take care. Have a good one.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you for sharing your poetry and for sharing your experience. I now would like to introduce Bodhi Shah from the Bureau of Indian Affairs Portland area office.
Well, thank you, Laura. Hopefully you can hear me all right. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and commissioners, for this wonderful opportunity to address the body as well as other visitors on the site. So yes, my name is Bodhi Shah. I'm a member of the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs, also have Tlingit ties in Alaska from my grandfather. I just want to really applaud the Mayor and City Council for this proclamation. I think, one, it shows a number of different perspectives that the city brings to the table when we talk about opening our arms to welcoming many of the indigenous nations that have met much of the traditional ownership of current city of Portland lands. And I think it's that recognition that the city has done. And I think the tribal recognition of also what the city has done that has really opened up a number of different opportunities. I want to thank Laura through her tribal relations director job, and then the city's foresight to create a position like this that really has opened the doors to many of our indigenous communities, not only around within Portland with nearly 60,000 Native Americans, which I'm proud, Northwest Portlander here now, I'm proud to be part of that. But it's also for those tribes with usual and accustomed ties to the Portland area. And I think that's important on a number of fronts. With that urban Indian population approaching 400 different tribes represented, I think it is important, obviously, for the city to recognize that. But it's not only the recognition, it's also what we do with that recognition. And once again, these events like the proclamation have been so key to recognizing the tribal interest of this land, but it's also having those tribes be part of the city's process, part of the city's engagement when it comes to maybe new opportunities for tribes and their engagement. Laura invited me over the last couple of years for the Bull Run watershed, some of the inner workings that have gone on with the city and bringing together some of the tribes for a seat at the table. So I applaud that. One thing I do want to leave the mayor and council with is some opportunities. Laura and I have talked a little bit about that, but it's a respect to country. And it's really the respect that the city gives to the traditional owners of the current day city of Portland. And I think that's important for a number of different hopefully that's a next step. And Laura and I, maybe we can talk a little bit more about it. The country of Australia has really done a great job of recognizing those traditional owners and paying respect to country in nearly everything that the country, states, and territories do. I think Portland's leading the engagement with our indigenous communities, and I think that would fall in lockstep with this continued direction. So once again, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, and thank you for this invite, Laura. I really appreciate it. You're doing a great job, and so is the city in leading the way. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bodie. Appreciate your words and appreciate your partnership. Next, I'd like to bring forward Katie Wolf to speak.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Council. My name is Katie Wolf. I work for the Bureau of Emergency Management, and I'm a member of the Kiowa Tribe. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. And I'm here as a representative from the city's new First Nations affinity group for employees. And for many years, the city's had affinity groups for employees to organize around a shared interest or identity. And we haven't been able to successfully launch one in the past, but virtual meeting platforms actually made that easier. So we're starting that group now, and it's been a great opportunity to meet and connect with thoughtful and talented staff in different parts of the city. The other tribes that our affinity group represents so far are, besides Kiowa, Seneca, Blackfoot, Cherokee, Catawba, Tlingit, Klamath, Modoc, Paiute, Yahuskin, and Warm Springs. And I want to thank Commissioner Fritz for requesting that a Native affinity group get started and supporting that, and for all her support for advocating for Native employees and community members and the tribes that have a voice at the city. As a City of Portland emergency manager, I wanted to share some examples of how the city has been able to contribute in a small way to Native American mutual aid efforts during this pandemic. Recently, Laura John, our Tribal Relations Director, introduced me to an amazing person, Jason Umtuck of the Warm Springs tribe, who lives in Portland. So Jason, or Biggie as he is known, he's also known for being a dedicated and humble community organizer. Since March, he built up a mutual aid organization in Portland from scratch with the help of some other groups like Don't Shoot PDX, and has been able to raise over $100,000 in funds and another $100,000 in food and water and cleaning supply donations that are carried to tribal reservations by volunteers every week. So as the manager of the city's Emergency Coordination Center, I was asked if the ECC could help his mutual aid group, which is called Fires Igniting the Spirit. And I'm proud to say that we were able to help this group find storage space alongside ours so they could continue doing this amazing work. And that's just one example of how the city has helped a tribal group during an emergency, but I did want to share one more. This past July, the Warm Spring tribe, they've had some problems with their water supply system and some leakages there. So the Portland Water Bureau sent an emergency water truck to help distribute clean water. And they have maintained that relationship with the Warm Springs emergency manager, Danny Martinez, who I have a lot of respect for. So thank you to the Water Bureau team for your assistance and for maintaining that relationship. I wanted to point out many tribes are in need of help right now, and many were experiencing what we would consider a state of emergency before COVID-19. And tribes have been surviving since Columbus came, since the Pilgrims came, but we're still here and we're resilient. As a city, it is so important that we support our Native staff, that we go beyond words and proclamations, and we find ways to support mutual aid efforts during an emergency and to do whatever we can to help those most in need. Thank you, City Council. Thank you to my emergency management and First Nations colleagues, and thank you to everyone volunteering your time and making donations right now. I'll turn it back to you, Laura.
Thank you, Katie. Amazing to hear the work that's being done in collaboration with the ECC. I would have the opportunity to join one of Jason Umtuck's mutual aid deliveries to the Nez Perce tribe, and it was a great event. Really proud to have support represented the city of Portland at that distribution. I want to wrap up by expressing my gratitude to all of you for the support that you provide to the city's tribal relations program. That support has provided the ability to open numerous doors to improved engagement, inclusion, visibility, and voice of tribal governments and of the urban Indian community. And just lastly, I want to, from the bottom of my heart, send gratitude and thanks and respect to Commissioner Fritz for everything that you have done that has led to all of this work occurring, your vision for inclusion, your vision for reconciliation. We're going to miss you I hope that you continue to keep track of the tribal relations program and continue to be a trusted and admired mentor. Thank you.
Thank you, Director John. Colleagues, does anybody have anything they'd like to share prior to my reading the proclamation? Commissioner Fritz.
Just thank you to the people who have honored us with your presence here today. Thank you, Laura John, for your leadership. And thank you, colleagues. As I mentioned in my budget speech, this is not just words in a proclamation. We are backing it up with investments, with support, and with ongoing action. I know that Laura John has been working with Cynthia Castro and Yesenia Carrillo on my staff to with the Native communities to develop a land acknowledgement process and statement, as well as some next step actions. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to bring it over the finish line before I leave. So whoever has the honor of bringing that to council next year, it comes with responsibilities that we need to continue investing in our relationships with the tribal nations. I was glad to hear Katie Wolf's listing of the tribes that are involved in the affinity group. I would bet that one of the Tlingit members is Carrie Turcon Waters, who was part of my first staff in 2009 and who taught me an enormous amount about Native communities, as well as Patty Howard, who worked for the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission for 7 years before she joined my staff and was responsible for the 2011 resolution establishing the relationship and acknowledgement of the tribal nations. So it has been an honor to have done this work. I will tell you that I have brought home all of my honoring regalia and will be wearing them at my last council session in December. So thank you so much for your partnership.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to say a few things before you read the proclamation. First of all, thank you, Director Laura John, for bringing members of the community, Ed Edmo, Bodie Shaw, and Katie Wolf. I was taken with all of your words. I also want to just acknowledge, on a personal note, last Monday I took a bereavement day to be with my family in the Sluts tribe, and I want to honor the life of Judy Payne Mason. And I think when we have these proclamations, it's always a moment to wonder why it's 1 month. And I do also want to acknowledge that this Friday is it's always one of my favorite events, and I know it'll be virtual this year, but I want to acknowledge the good people at NAIA for putting on a virtual gala this Friday. Executive Director Paul Lumley and of course Representative Tana Sanchez, and I look forward to participating virtually. I just think it's so crucial that we take time to remember the history, and I really want to take the language that I just heard, the traditional owners, who are the people of the Native American community and the urban Indian country are in full representation. And finally, thank you, Commissioner Fritz, for your legacy of building something that was long overdue. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Laura John, for putting this morning's event together. I also want to especially appreciate Katie and for the work that she has done with the ECC. It's been absolutely just stellar work and has actually brought a lot of new learning into the city of Portland about a variety of communities who have been left behind during this pandemic. And it's wonderful to see that we are in sync and trying to make sure that we address the needs of our most vulnerable community members. I also want to appreciate you, Laura John. I'm still sitting with the information that you and I obtained from our focus group with some Native women. I am looking forward to having a similar conversation with Native men because we know that our communities experience policing very differently than white middle class communities do. And I just want to assure you and all Indigenous people that their experience matters and their experience will inform the work that we do moving forward. I am thrilled that you actually will no longer be a 1.5 office. And I look forward to being more engaged in your work as Commissioner Fritz retires. I'm looking forward to being more engaged and involved. I think these are critical partnerships that we have to build, especially coming out of this pandemic, because I believe you share my perspective that we will never go back to what was prior to the pandemic. We have an obligation to build a more equitable and inclusive city, not just on paper, but for real. So thank you for all the work that you do. And I look forward to what comes next.
Thank you, Commissioner. Very good. And with that, I will read a proclamation on behalf of the City Council. Whereas the City of Portland now rests on lands at the confluence of the Willamette and Columbia Rivers, a major crossroads for the economic, social, and political interactions of tribal nations for thousands of years. And whereas Native American people who've been here since time immemorial continue to contribute immeasurably to our city's heritage, distinguishing themselves as scholars, veterans, teachers, athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, and leaders. And whereas the American Indian and Alaska Native people of the Portland metropolitan statistical area is over 50,000 people, descended from more than 380 tribes or bands from across the nation. And whereas the City of Portland supports, in concert with its tribal partners, efforts to preserve for tribal members and their descendants' rights secured under Indian treaties, executive orders, and benefits to which they are entitled under the laws and Constitution of the United States and several states. And whereas the City of Portland strives to educate our employees and community towards a better understanding of American Indian and Alaska Native people, to preserve cultural values, and otherwise to promote the welfare of Native American people. And whereas our local Native American community continues to contribute to the cultural fabric of the City of Portland and has found creative ways to provide mutual support to maintain connection and to build community amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas the City of Portland supports the inaugural First Nations Affinity Group for American Indian Alaska Native employees by allowing for an annual budget, paid time, support resources, and relationship to a network of other city diverse and empowered employee affinity groups. And whereas the City of Portland is committed to culturally responsive public safety programs that appropriately serve Native people and proactively engage in tribal nation law enforcement agencies to increase trust, rapport, and engagement to ensure equitable policing practices are afforded to all tribal people in our city. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim November 2020 to be Native American Heritage Month in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this time. Thank you. Thank you, Director John. Appreciate it so much, as always. And thank you to all of our presenters today for honoring us with your presence and sharing your information with all of us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. It's good seeing you. Next up, Keelan, is a second reading, item 900.
Adopt code and administration rules for the Community Opportunities and Enhancements Program.
This is the second reading. We've heard our presentation and testimony. Any further business on this item? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Daly.
Aye.
Fritz.
It has not been at all easy getting this program up and running. There's been various challenges in it, and I'm very grateful to Procurement Officer Lester Spittler for his leadership and partnership to get it done, and also honor Commissioner Fish, who developed this program and had the conviction that we needed to do it. Thanks also to Dr. Markeisha Smith. Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Let me just say that I hope that this move actually makes this program work the way it was intended to work. I look forward to getting quarterly updates on whether or not this program actually is serving the purpose that it intends to serve. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
I want to thank Lester for his many years of service to the city of Portland and for doing the hard work that is required in this position and working with all of us on the city council. Lester, we will miss you. Thank you for your dedicated service. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next is also a second reading, 901.
Assess properties for sidewalk, curb, and/or driveway repair for the Portland Bureau of Transportation.
Second reading. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Daly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. And colleagues, let me just quickly finish up the other two second readings. 903, please, is the second reading. If you could read that, Keelan.
Create a local improvement district to construct water main improvements in the Southwest Quail Post Road Local Improvement District.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this second reading item? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Daly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. And the last second reading on today's agenda, 904.
Amend trees in development situations code to remove zone exemptions from tree preservation and tree density and amend regulations for preservation of private trees.
Thank you. Second reading. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Daly.
I've already read my closing remarks in a previous session, so I'm just going to read some brief remarks today. Today's vote has been a long time coming. When the original changes to Title 11 first came to council last year, I was concerned at the lack of engagement and consultation with our trusted community partners and the missed opportunity to do better at protecting our trees. So I want to appreciate the outreach and revision that has occurred since then, and I'm happy to support the changes in front of us today. I want to thank all the tireless community engagement and advocacy that went into this code. In particular, thanks to our advisory body members on the PSC and Urban Forestry Commission, and a special thank you to Bob Salinger for all his work. Aye.
Fritz.
I'm really excited about this next step in the city's work to protect trees, starting with the adoption of Title 11 under Mayor Hales. I'm This also is a work in progress. I remind the council next year that there is another step to be coming back in March, and that more funding is needed to do a complete overhaul of Title 11. This is a really good step, and I particularly thank the youth who have advocated for this change. Thanks in Parks to Deputy Director Todd Lofgren, Jen Cairo, the urban forester, Nick Desai, and Brian Lando in urban forestry. In development services, Emily Sandy, very complicated project with so many bureaus. Thank you, Emily. Sam Diaz in Mayor Wheeler's office, Charity Montez in Commissioner Ryan's office, Cynthia Castro in my office, certainly the community members that Commissioner Udaly referred to, and in particular Bob Salinger, who is actually the epitome of tireless. It seems like he just keeps going, and I know that he also is looking forward to the next steps. Aye.
Ryan?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Fritz, for naming everybody so eloquently, and Commissioner Udaly for giving me more context about the journey this has been on. I just want to call out the Bureau of Development Services for shepherding along the many, many partners within the bureaus and also in the community. And this is the right step at the right time. I vote aye.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Wheeler?
I appreciate everybody's work on this. The ordinance is adopted. And last but not least for this morning, item number 902.
Establish city's language access policy and program and direct bureaus to implement the policy, standard operating procedures, tools, resources, and guidance adopted by the Office of Equity and Human Rights.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. Colleagues, I am very excited to introduce this language access resolution today. This resolution represents years of work and dedication in the Office of Equity and Human Rights to help the city better serve multilingual and multicultural community members and demonstrate proactive compliance with federal law. This resolution is also a follow-up to the civil rights compliance resolution that we passed in October. The staff leading this work is Tatiana Elehaldi. I think you're going to be really interested in this presentation, and I'll turn it over to Tatiana.
Diaz, Mayor Wheeler. Hello, Commissioner Udaly. Hello, Commissioner Fritz, and thank you so much. And hello, Commissioner Hardesty, and nice to meet you, Commissioner Ryan. For the record, my name is Tatiana Elehaldi. I'm with the Office of Equity and Human Rights. I'm the city's Equity and Language Access Analyst, and I am serving as the Language Access Lead for the Emergency Coordination Center and serving as Equity Officer for our Emergency Coordination Center's COVID-19 response. And now I'm going to share my screen and begin the presentation. Again, it is truly an honor to be here today. As an immigrant woman to the United States from Colombia, this work is incredibly personal to me. I am here because I do this work every day on behalf of community. I do it for my family. I bring the respect and the strength of my ancestors, and I am very honored to be able to do this work both for community and for the city. When we talk about language access, I want to be clear that we are talking about language equity. We are talking about language justice. In the history of the Americas, settler colonialism was responsible for the eradication of languages and many cultural norms. And oftentimes, this became even through policy. Certain languages and cultural traditions were eradicated. And additionally, the African people stolen from their homeland and brought to the Americas and enslaved also experience the eradication of their cultures and their languages. So this work of language access is about language justice, and it's about creating a more just system. Our institutional obligations around language access come from the national origin discrimination protections of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now, our institutional obligations to Title VI are more broad than language access and include racial equity. But the national origin non-discrimination protections are what lead this work and our institutional obligations. Executive Order 13166 additionally expands on these obligations and these protections and asks institutions who receive federal funding to examine their services that they provide to limited English proficiency communities, identify institutional barriers, and work to implement a system that is more equitable. This work and the resolution before you today is in alignment with many existing City of Portland plans and commitments that we have made as a city government to these communities that are impacted. The Portland Plan's Framework for Equity states that a language access program will be created. This is also in alignment with the citywide racial equity goals and strategies. Language access commitments are also listed in the Bureau Racial Equity Plans. And the commitments to immigrant and refugee communities of the City of Portland, also through the Welcoming, Inclusive, and Sanctuary City Resolution. In addition to other resolutions that have been passed that are culturally specific, and even as we've seen today, some of the culturally specific proclamations that city staff bring forth who identify with immigrant and refugee communities and multicultural communities. According to the most recent census data, 19.4% of the city's population speaks a language other than English at home. That includes people like me I speak Spanish and English. Of those, 8.1% of the city's population, well above 49,000 people aged 5 years and older, identifies as speaking English less than very well. I think it's so important to realize that these are individuals that we are talking about, because oftentimes in data points, I think the people get lost. So to really recognize who will be benefiting from the adoption of this resolution and the establishment of this language access policy and the establishment of the language access program. So over 49,000 individuals that live here in Portland will benefit from this today. My approach to this work is a strengths-based approach. And so the term limited English proficiency is a legal term. It's a term that you will hear me use and that we use when we're talking about the law, when we're talking about civil rights, when we're talking about that executive order. But I like to work with city staff to encourage that we use a strengths-based approach, and that we call these communities, especially when we're working directly with them, that we're talking about them in ways that are respectful. So saying multilingual and multicultural community members really respects the fact that English proficiency is a spectrum. And many people who may identify as limited English proficient actually are individuals who came to this country already speaking one or more languages. So this strengths-based approach to speaking about our communities as multicultural, multilingual communities who experience institutional language barriers is respectful of that lived experience. I am proud to say that the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management leadership ensured that I was contacted as soon as the Emergency Coordination Center was activated during this really crucial and devastating time for our community and our world. So I have been the language access lead for the Emergency Coordination Center's COVID-19 response since the beginning. And within the first 2 weeks, I created the language access guidance and created a tracking tool and guidance for implementation across the ECC. I am also proudly serving as the Emergency Coordination Center's equity officer at this time. The pandemic's impacts, as we know, have exacerbated existing systemic inequities for many communities, especially Black, Indigenous, immigrant and refugee communities, and communities with people with disabilities and intersecting identities. The heightened awareness and need for embedding equity is really at the highest I've seen in our commitment in city government. And through the emergency response, I've seen an increased awareness of staff of understanding the impacts of institutional language barriers, especially when we're looking at getting important safety messaging out to community. I'm proud to say that I was part of some projects that we put together that got out to community in over 35 languages. And it was very important for us to work with community leaders and especially include Indigenous languages of the Americas in those over 35 languages for those projects. The importance of institutionalizing and operationalizing language access standards and procedures is the work of embedding language equity into our system. The Office of Equity and Human Rights takes a proactive approach to our institutional responsibilities under Title VI and ensuring that we focus on equitable service delivery, decision-making, planning, and policymaking. Specifically, and I want to also say that our responsibilities around Title VI are broader than language access and also include racial equity. For language access, it's especially important that we talk about engaging in linguistically and culturally specific ways with multilingual and multicultural communities that experience language barriers. It's incredibly important that we recognize that there's unique strategies that can be used to engage with these communities. And even more importantly, that we ask community, how do they want to be engaged by their city government? And what are the best ways for that engagement? So for community to drive that. Today is exciting because we will be able to hopefully adopt the City of Portland's first language access policy. Now, our responsibilities around language access are already stated in our civil rights obligations, but the policy today states that the City of Portland will ensure meaningful access to the city's programs, services, activities, information, and communication to all community members, including individuals who are limited English proficient. The City of Portland is responsible for taking reasonable steps to provide equitable and meaningful access to its programs, services, activities, and communications. The bureaus are responsible for implementing the language access policy, the standard operating procedures, tools, resources, and guidance created by the Office of Equity and Human Rights. The bureaus need to track and monitor, assess, report, and evaluate bureau programs, services, activities, and communications in order to remove institutional barriers and take reasonable steps to provide meaningful access to multicultural, multilingual communities who experience institutional language barriers. Tracking is a very important part of embedding language equity into what we do as a city. So we are going to need to track public initiated and proactive bureau initiated language access efforts. As mentioned in the resolution, this will be in alignment with our greater civil rights tracking requirements coming out of the Office of Equity and Human Rights. Some bureaus are already tracking some language access efforts, but we do not have a unified, standardized way of tracking. And so again, we think of these two streams of work that we're tracking: public initiated and proactive bureau initiated. We will provide the high level data points, and the bureaus will be able to add additional data points if they want. We're going to track things like the type of contact with LEP individuals, the cost, the type of language service provided, and the language that those services were provided in. And again, all of this is done free of cost to the community member. It's so important that we track because it shows and demonstrates compliance with Title VI. And also importantly, to inform Bureau budgeting related to language access. At this time, it's difficult for bureaus to know what they're actually spending in order to be able to project what they will need to set aside for language access. And bureaus will need to implement a tracking system prior to developing their language access plan process. This is a federally mandated process, and I will be helping the bureaus and overseeing this process citywide. The language access planning process is based on what is called the 4-factor analysis. And what you see on this screen are the 4 factors. It's an assessment that the bureaus will need to do. Factor 1 has already been done for us by the amazing demographer Uma Krishnan, who works for the Portland Housing Bureau and was previously with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. That Factor 1 analysis and the guidance that I created to accompany it is listed on the Office of Equity and Human Rights language access page. That web page will be where the standard operating procedures, tools, resources, and guidance are listed as a resource for city staff in the implementation of language equity. In the 4-factor analysis, the bureaus will conduct an assessment of the data that they're tracking through factors 2 through 4. So tracking is so important because it really needs to build this foundation for the bureaus before they embark on the language access planning process. This process is required by the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. And so I wanted to include this slide that came from the DOJ's language access planning tool and guidance. So there will be a lot of support for the bureaus in this planning process, and I will be able to put all those resources on the webpage and also, of course, provide technical assistance throughout the process. I have created the language access 4-factor analysis template that the bureaus can use, but they will also have these additional resources from the DOJ. I am introducing 2 new concepts to the City of Portland and upholding one important pillar in this work. The first concept I'm introducing to the city is the communication path considerations. This is asking city staff to really put themselves in the perspective of the multilingual community member navigating our system or navigating their individual program, service, or activity or communication. It's important that we embed these considerations as early on in the process as possible, as we recommend with all things equity. Embedding equity as early on in the process is going to get us the best outcomes for community. So the communication path considerations has city staff take a look at what is the ultimate goal or outcome you're looking to achieve with community, and then work upstream to navigate that process. For example, if we're standing up a new program for community, start with what you are hoping the LEP community member, what you would like to achieve, what's the desired outcome for the community, and then follow each step of the process to be able to assess if there's language barriers that can be removed or mitigated. And of course, as always, we need to remember that the end user is always a community member. One example of something that is a proactive bureau-initiated language access effort, one of these streams that we will track, and a lot of city staff are already doing a really great job at being proactive. But sometimes we aren't aware, especially if the staff is monolingual, maybe not aware of what an institutional language barrier could be. So encouraging folks to, for example, if they've gone ahead and gotten an interpreter for a meeting and they've gone ahead and gotten an application translated, but then it gets put up on the webpage with the title in English, though the document is translated, that's something that a communication path consideration can help a city staff member assess and realize that that's one small block in the process for those community members. The second concept I'm introducing to the city is Language Link, and that is for staff who are already providing their language ability in connecting to community members, that they be utilized as a language link until a professional language service provider can be secured. This concept is one that I have shared at a nationwide municipal language access directors network that I'm a part of. And there are other municipalities that are interested in incorporating this concept into their existing policies and processes. And this concept will also come before you when we bring the language access, the language pay differential policy to you at a work session in the beginning of December. I have been a co-lead in that cross-bureau policy process, and I'm very excited to talk to you more about this at that time. When there are health, safety, financial, or legal impacts or notices of civil rights, it's important that we use a professional language service provider to communicate this important technical information to community members. Accuracy is an important part of trust building with community. And this is an important pillar in the work of language equity and language access. Robust community engagement, as I always tell city staff when I'm providing advisement, is important to do prior to or in conjunction with document translation. Oftentimes I'm working towards educating and training in order to dispel the myth that language access equals document translation. And as hopefully you're learning in this presentation, language access is much, much greater than just document translation. In fact, budgeting for community engagement, and again, this would be an example of that proactive bureau-initiated language access effort that you would be able to track and track with budget. Allocating money for community engagement is so important. And oftentimes that may reduce the cost of the translation budget that you are setting aside. So it's very important for us to do this. Oftentimes I tell staff that it's important for us to understand that if we want equitable outcomes, we cannot always use status quo processes in order to get those outcomes. And that's truly the work of systems change. The responsibilities of the language access program will be to create standard operating procedures and guidance, provide best practices, but also co-create best practices with the existing good work across the bureaus, provide tools and resources, provide bureau advisement, provide advisement to and collaboration with the equity managers, train and provide technical assistance to bureau-based language access groups. And I will provide, as the city's language access lead, I will provide language access analysis to assess institutional language barriers and provide strategies to either mitigate or remove those barriers. And I will oversee the language access planning process. Language access is a continuous quality improvement process. Tracking is an accountability measure and part of this process. And in recognizing that language and culture are fluid and that language access is a continuous quality improvement process, we understand that we're meeting the needs of the community and recognizing the ever-changing demographics of our city. So it's important for us to track, to assess, to evaluate, and to report on language access efforts. We need to recognize that we need to embed language equity as early on in the process as we're developing programs, services, activities in our information and communications to the public, in decision-making, and in policy design. We are working to create an anti-racist, anti-ableist, multicultural institution. And truly, language access is so much more than document translation. We're talking about embedding language equity and creating better outcomes for individuals that experience institutional language barriers. And we are creating a more just system by recognizing that language access is language justice. Muchísimas gracias. I'd like to take a moment to thank all my colleagues at the Office of Equity and Human Rights. I would like to thank our amazing director for all her support and leadership, Dr. Markeisha Smith, and especially thanking Commissioner Fritz for all her support in this work and for her amazing policy staff that has also been a great support to me. And at this time, I thank you so much, and I'm ready to answer any questions at this time. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Tatiana. Any questions at this point, colleagues? Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Smith, and thank you, Tatiana. That was it was great. I loved the topic. I just happen to live on a block where 1/3 of the households are led by people who, in that category that you gave, that do not speak English well. And I'm aware of this because every time there's an emergency, I have to use my version of translation to like let them know it's not foggy out today. It's actually a smoke hazard. And just, I can't tell you how many times in the 20 years I've lived on the block, excuse me, where I'm well aware we have a lot of language access issues in our city. I appreciated the language that you use. The end user is the community. And to that end, one thing I didn't get from the presentation is who are your partners? We have a lot of capabilities in the community, the nonprofit community, obviously, IRCO, Latino Network, to just name a couple. I just want to know that you're in touch with our partners, because building capabilities doesn't need to be always internalized. It's about how we share the work with the community. And I know that you know that, so I'm hoping you will let me know how that robust engagement is going.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Appreciate it.
Actually, I would love to hear a little bit of feedback on that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't sure. Yes, absolutely. Stakeholder engagement, both internal and external stakeholder engagement, is a pillar of the work. And in these times right now, stakeholder engagement is unique, and we have to have different ways to engage. But I'm very excited to pivot towards being able to do that with the adoption and the formal establishment of the language access program. We're able to, I'm ready, after years and years of putting this work together, to be able to vision growing the program and to be able to vision what it will look like to really do that robust stakeholder engagement with amazing organizations like the ones that you've listed, and also with community leaders. And I can say that we have partnered with IRCO specifically through the messaging and those projects that I mentioned at the Emergency Coordination Center. So they have been an incredibly valuable partner in all of this. And we were very happy to work with them because it was also providing employment for our linguistically and culturally specific community members here. So thank you so much for your question.
Absolutely. I look forward when you come back to hearing from those communities. I find that a lot of the work is already being done, and it's at the grassroots level, and it's the city's job to ignite that and engage that, and even resource it if necessary. So thank you.
Absolutely. The community is at center of absolutely everything I do in this work and in our work at the Office of Equity and Human Rights. So the community should be able to, and I would like to work towards having the community be able to vision and design this program along with us as city staff.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Tiana. My question is really around, do we know today how many languages are spoken by employees at the City of Portland?
Oh, spoken by employees. Yeah. I don't have that list, but I would love to be able to provide that information to you when we come to the work session for the language pay differential policy.
Yes, I was just going to say, as you know, we have this issue at the city where we have talented employees who speak a multitude of languages, yet we don't utilize those employees in a way that actually supports their additional skill set or to help us actually solve problems internally around communication. So it is my hope that as this moves forward, that we really are thinking about how do we tap into the talent that we have at the City of Portland and really elevate that from our employees. What this pandemic has taught us is that we have a deep bench of talent at the City of Portland that we traditionally do not utilize. And the pandemic has given some of those employees an opportunity to really to show their expertise. And I know this resolution is really focused on how we communicate outside of City Hall. But it's really important of how we communicate inside City Hall as well, and how we take advantage of the expertise that we have. So I look forward to learning how many different languages are spoken by city employees and how we can support them and helping us break down barriers. The last thing I will say is, if my colleagues have not done this, I would encourage every colleague to go to a meeting where someone is translating to you. If you go to a meeting where you're waiting to find out what people are talking about, I believe you do public engagement radically different after you've had that lived experience. And so I want to challenge my colleagues and bureau directors to go to a meeting that's not being conducted in English and find out how welcome and included you feel. And if you don't feel welcome and included, ask yourself why, and how other people have that same lived experience. Thank you so much for your work, and I look forward to the next steps. And let me ask one last question before I stop. What I understand with this resolution is that we're putting a framework in place, but there is really no plan today. Am I accurate in that assessment?
No, I've been working for many years to put in place standard operating procedures and guidance that will be provided to city staff for implementation, but really have been working on creating those all these years without having what is being formally established through this resolution. So very quickly, if you all adopt this resolution, I will be able to post all the standard operating procedures that I have waiting in the wings, ready to go for city staff for implementation. So I already have a lot of that ready to put on the webpage to support city staff in implementation.
I would very much like an opportunity to review that before you post it online. I think it's important to have our officers engaged in that conversation prior to it going public. Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. And as well as we will have equity practitioners and equity managers also be able to review them. The standard operating procedures have already gotten a review from the Civil Rights Title VI manager in our office. So it's gone through a few steps, but absolutely, yes, greater engagement, both internal and external. And I appreciate your comments about the value that city staff bring who are multicultural and multilingual and bring that value to their work. Having been at the Emergency Coordination Center from the very beginning, I saw that the bureaus really had a desire to tap those staff and be able to serve community through this critical time. But in absence of the language pay differential, I'm just excited to be able to have more of these conversations around how we can value those staff and the value that they bring to the organization and the bridge, the trust building bridge that they provide to community. Thank you so much, Commissioner Hardesty.
There's liability issues around tapping into employees who speak a multitude of language. Have you encountered that? Have you encountered that as a barrier to action?
There are statistics through the 311 survey that was conducted that show that limited English proficiency community members were stating that they don't contact the city because they do experience language barriers. And that's a statistic that we will be able to bring to you at the work session.
I'm sorry, actually, I was thinking of it just the opposite way, having employees that speak multiple languages and having them assist in providing services to community members. The pushback I continue to hear is that there are liability issues associated with it. And so that's why I'm asking that question. It would be stupid for us to not utilize expertise that we have in-house. And so I'm wondering if you have encountered that in the work that you've been doing, even without the policy.
There are the criteria that I listed in one of those slides are the same criteria that we want to encourage professional language service providers to be used. So when there's health, safety, legal, and rights notifications, we should use professional language service providers at that time. And city staff used as a language link for providing other types of information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you for those questions, Commissioner Hardesty. I know that you were not able to keep our meeting last week. I'd be happy to set up a briefing with you on the language pay differential policy that Tatiana alluded to. So there are the 4 areas where professional interpreters are required, in addition to written translation is required to be done by contractors. And then there's also what we're going to be introducing at the work session and in the pay differential policy of using people, multilingual city staff to provide the language link and also compensating them for that time. So that's all coming in the policy that we'll be bringing forward in December.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. And colleagues, are there any further questions before we open this up for public comment? Keelan, has anybody signed up for public comment today?
Mayor, we do have one invited testimony.
All right.
Sorry, that was my fault. Yes, it's my pleasure to introduce to you all today Romeo Sosa, who is a community leader and a Maya Quiche and Spanish interpreter, an example of someone who is fluent in 3 languages and perhaps more. So handing it over to you, Romeo. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and City Commissioners. I'm sorry, my dog is barking.
No worries.
Yeah, I'm Romeo Sosa, Maya Quiche from Guatemala. I'm here to ask you to vote yes to adopt this resolution to establish city language access policy and program and direct Bureau to implement the policy, standard operating procedures, tools, resources, and guidance adopted by the Office of Equity and Human Rights. It is an honor to be here today to testify on behalf of the indigenous community. The Hispanic community or Latino community, Latinx community is a pretty diverse community. Many of us, we don't speak Spanish as a first language when we come to the United States. Just an example, in Guatemala, we speak about 23 different Mayan languages, in Mexico, more than 68. I've been working closely here with a lot of groups to translate in my own languages, which is Maya Quiche, about the COVID-19 and the quarantine fund, to reach out more than just the Latino Hispanic community, because there's a lot of people that they don't speak Spanish. And thank you for doing that, Tatiana. And I'm gonna continue to work with the Maya Quiche community here in Portland and everywhere they need me. And also I wanna thank you, Tatiana, for writing this resolution. Your work and talent is very needed in the government. As I work directly in the community, both work, it's important. If this resolution passes, it will include us in the life of the city of Portland. I just want to thank you again, and thank you, Commissioner Fritz.
Muchísimas gracias, Romeo.
Claro.
Dr. Smith, did you have anything you'd like to add at the end?
No, just thank you to Tatiana. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. This has been, I know, a long road for Tatiana. And so I really wanted to reserve my comments and allow her to really speak to this work and to have her passion for that, her skill set for that come through. And so I'm just excited about the direction of our office. Can I just say that? I'm really energized by it. I'm excited by it. And I work with a group of very talented individuals who make what I do. I won't say easy, but I'll say easier, right? And so I am just grateful for their work. And thank you, Tatiana, for your work today. So.
Thank you very much, Dr. Smith. Those are definitely the best headphones we've seen today. Excellent, very fashionable, awesome. Tatiana, thank you very much for your presentation. Romeo, thank you for your presentation. Keelan, do we have anybody signed up for public testimony today?
No, no one is on the call.
All right, very good. This is a resolution, colleagues, so we're prepared to take the vote. Keelan, please call the roll.
Udaley.
First, I'd like to thank Tatiana for this excellent presentation and all her hard work on this issue. I have been advocating for more centralized and consistent accommodations at the city for the past 4 years, and I'm so relieved that this work is finally moving forward. As long as we treat accommodations as a favor we're doing for people who deviate from the norm, we are perpetuating inequities and privileging the majority. And frankly, I think we're violating Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. While we're at it, these practices are very evident throughout the city, including in our civic engagement network. So if we take civic engagement and public input seriously, we have to create and fund a process and network that is actually inclusive of our whole community. It's not just the right thing to do, it is a legal obligation that the city has been failing to live up to. I also want to express my support for the language pay differential policy. Being multilingual is a valuable skill, and our employees deserve to be compensated for it when they're being asked to use that skill in the workplace. I have had the unique experience, Commissioner Hardesty, of being translated to in a couple different settings, and it was frustrating, humbling, and enlightening, and has really helped inform my kind of sense of urgency and prioritization around this issue. And I'm happy to vote aye.
Fritz.
Thank you for those comments, Commissioner Udaley. And certainly whenever we have had people testifying at council in their first language first and waiting for the translation, I also have had that experience, as well as at community meetings. Thank you, Tatiana El-Haldi, for the love and care you've put into leading our city's language access work over the years through your role in the Office of Equity and over the past several months with the Emergency Command Communications Center. We are so fortunate to have your expertise and leadership at the city. Thank you, Dr. Markeisha Smith, the Director of the Office of Equity and Human Rights, whose leadership not only within this Bureau, but across the city has been exactly what we need in this moment. Thank you for your support in bringing this resolution forward today. Thank you, Romeo Sosa, for taking the time to provide testimony in support of the resolution today, and for all your work in the community. I appreciated your testimony very much. The demand for Tatiana's work has grown considerably during the COVID-19 pandemic. The time is now for this resolution to come to council to establish the Language Access Program and the city's first ever language access policy. We need consistent standards across the city. We need to track the things outlined in the resolution, and we need to budget for this work. This is a first step to establish the policy. There will be administrative rules, which will, as usual, be notified to all the council offices as well as to city staff with a comment period. There is a lot more work to do. And so you can see why we have chosen to have Tatiana work full time on this work as the language access analyst. It needs probably more funding moving forward as well. And I do look forward to sharing the language pay differential policy that Tatiana and Cynthia Castro and Yesenia Carrillo have been working on, and we will bring to council before the end of the year. I urge my colleagues and future council members to continue to prioritize this work. Our bureaus are asking for it, our community is counting on us, and as was mentioned, it is the law. Thank you for bringing it forward. Aye.
Ryan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Tatiana. That was a great presentation, and I enjoyed our conversation a little bit earlier. Much of my comments were embedded in that. When I was on the school board in 2005, we really had to work quickly to build proper operations so that we could connect with the children that we were failing and the families that we were connecting to. So I've been to dozens and dozens and dozens of meetings where I've been in a translation mode. I'll never forget the first one I went to, they reminded me, you look at the person speaking in their native language, you don't look at the translator. And I just really appreciate that you were responsive and are working with the communities. We have a lot of assets out there and in the community, and leveraging them so that we can move this work forward with authenticity from the ground up will be really important to me. So I vote aye.
Hardesty.
Thank you very much, Tiana, for the incredible work that you've done. This moves the needle a little. As we know, we still have access issues, people who have limited hearing, people who are blind. What we know is that when we make those accommodations the norm rather than an exception, we have more people with those disabilities participate. We have an obligation, as has been mentioned by Commissioner Udaley. This is the law, that we make government accessible to everyone in our community. And so I know that I think for 10 years, we've been working on the pay differentials, that thing, the pay difference for people who speak more than one language. Thank goodness it is finally on track to come in front of the City Council. Romero, it's always a pleasure to see you. It's been forever, but seeing you in my little virtual box, I'm very grateful that you took the time to join us today. This is necessary work that we must do. Again, I just wish that it didn't take us forever to do things that are the law and that are common sense. But here we are, we're moving, and let's keep the momentum going. I vote.
Wheeler.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mayor. If I may, I forgot to appreciate Markeisha Smith. Markeisha, you have been a bright light when we started this Office of Equity and Human Rights. I do not personally believe we had the right director to start with, but we do have the right director at this time and this moment, and the work that you're doing is pretty incredible. Thank you so much for your service to the City of Portland.
Wheeler.
Oh, it looks like we lost the mayor. Well, I think we'll just give him a minute. I'm sure he just got disconnected and maybe he'll be back. I'm pretty sure he didn't just walk out. Unless I get direction as president of the council that he did have to walk out.
It's something I said.
I think he got disconnected. It looked like he was frozen for a moment.
Yeah. Is anybody from the mayor's staff available to tell us if he's trying to get back on? I'm sure he would have said lots of nice things, Tatiana, because this is really great work. And I will thank you on his behalf and assume at this point that he is not able to get back on in a timely manner. So just the way, hang on a second, I've got a call coming in, hang on. Hello?
Hey, so I dropped off.
Yeah, do you want to say anything? You're on.
Yeah,
okay, so you're on speaker. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Sorry, folks, a little technical problem on my end. I just want to thank Tatiana. Thank you so much, and Romeo, thank you very much for your presentation. Dr. Smith, thank you. Greatly appreciate your tremendous work on this. Wonderful presentation. I'm very happy to vote aye. The resolution is adopted. And I believe, Keelan, that completes our work for this morning. Is that correct?
Yes, it does, Mayor.
I'm going to call it. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Bye.